We are still processing Tuesday's explosive January 6th hearing with Cassidy Hutchinson, a former top aide to Trump Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. And amid all of the new revelations, there is one key thread that the committee laid out that made this the most important hearing yet. In the past few weeks, the committee has detailed that Trump's own people explained to him again and again that the 2020 election was not stolen. And yet still he pushed his conspiracies in order to pressure state officials to overturn their results. On Tuesday, what Cassidy Hutchinson pointed to in her testimony is that when Trump's schemes began to fall apart, Trump and his inner circle set their sights on January 6th.
As Mr. Giuliani and I were walking to his vehicles that evening, he looked at me and said something to the effect of, "Cass, are you excited for the 6th? It's going to be a great day. We're going to the Capitol. It's going to be great. The president's going to be there. He's going to look powerful. He's going to be with the members. He's going to be with the senators. Talk to the chief about it. Talk to the chief about it. He knows about it." I remember leaning against the doorway and saying, "I had an interesting conversation with Rudy, Mark. Sounds like we're going to go to the Capitol." He didn't look up from his phone and said something to the effect of, "There's a lot going on, Cass, but I don't know. Things might get real, real bad on January 6th.
Also, stock with AR-15.
Video and audio released by the committee show that on the morning of January 6th, there were Trump rally attendees that had weapons, including pistols, makeshift spears, and AR-15s. According to Ms. Hutchinson, Donald Trump knew they were armed and wanted them to march on the Capitol anyways.
I overheard the president say something to the effect of, I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Let the people in. Take the effing mags away."
If Ms. Hutchinson's sworn testimony is true, Donald Trump knew that the crowd was armed when he told them to go to the Capitol. He knew what they came prepared for when he said they needed to fight like hell. What Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony made even more clear is the violence on January 6th was not a mistake. It was the plan. And now we know that the committee is not done yet, far from it. On Wednesday night, they subpoenaed former White House counsel Pat Cipollone, a name that has been brought up repeatedly in these hearings and featured prominently in Ms. Hutchinson's testimony.
Mr. Cipollone said something to the effect of, "Please make sure we don't go up to the Capitol, Cassidy. Keep in touch with me. We're going to get charged with every crime imaginable if we make that movement happen."
Cipollone's testimony could corroborate and fill in key details about Donald Trump's actions leading up to and on January 6th, and would only bolster this thrust of the committee's case, that what we saw that day was Donald Trump's desperate, violent, and potentially illegal last-ditch effort to stay in power. Joining me now is former Assistant United States Attorney and former Assistant Special Watergate Prosecutor Nick Ackerman. Nick, it's always a pleasure to spend time with you. We'll get to Pat Cipollone in a minute, but first I have to ask you, after Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony, just how much deeper did Trump's legal exposure get?
Oh, he's up to his eyeballs in criminality at this point. I mean, this took him over the line. If ever there was a question before about his intent, what he wanted to do, this was it. I mean, we knew that at least a few days before January 6th, that Trump knew that his vice president was not going to do his bidding. He knew that his scheme to get Pence to basically ignore the electoral college count, and declare him the winner by virtue of all of these rigged electoral college votes that he put out there. That wasn't going to happen. Pence wasn't going to send the election back to the states. And so his only alternative here was to create violence and mayhem at the Capitol in order to stop that count, and then hope the next day, because Congress had not certified the vote, that he somehow could send the vote back to the battleground states. That was his plan, and that is clearly a violation of federal criminal law. It's a fraud on the government, and it's also an effort to basically obstruct Congress performing its constitutional function.
Nick, I want to play another part of Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony. This is a conversation she overheard between Mark Meadows and Pat Cipollone on January 6th. Take a listen.
I remember Pat saying something to the effect of, Mark, we need to do something more. They're literally calling for the vice president to be effing hung. And Mark had responded something to the effect of, you heard him, Pat. He thinks Mike deserves it. He doesn't think they're doing anything wrong. To which Pat said something, this is effing crazy. We need to be doing something more.
You know, Nick, how crucial is a deposition or some version or form of sworn testimony from Pat Cipollone going to be for this committee? I mean, they obviously are going to want to ask him about that exchange and others that we heard about during Hutchinson's testimony, right?
Oh, absolutely. And you really laid it out on the money right at the beginning of this thing when you said that what Pat Cipollone does is he corroborates the testimony of Cassidy Hutchinson. I mean, there's no reason for anybody to disbelieve Pat Cipollone. I mean, he's the lawyer who actually defended Donald Trump in the first impeachment proceeding. He basically should be able to confirm every single piece of Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony. And if he does, then there's really no question at that point. It's almost as good as having a tape recording. That's why Pat Cipollone is so important. I mean, what they're doing to Cassidy Hutchinson is the same thing that the Republicans did to John Dean after he testified in the Watergate committee. They came out at him questioning his credibility, and then lo and behold, what happens? They find out that there are tapes in the White House, and the tapes corroborated John Dean to the T. And I think Pat Cipollone is going to do the same thing here once he comes in and is questioned under oath.
Nick, though, Cipollone served as White House counsel. So obviously he could try to claim executive privilege on top of other types of privileges, right, for some topics. Do you think that's actually going to be a successful defense for Cipollone to avoid having to appear before the 1-6 committee?
It's an absurd defense. First of all, there's no attorney-client privilege. Pat Cipollone was not the lawyer for Donald Trump. He was not his personal lawyer. He was only the lawyer for the office of the presidency. There is no attorney-client privilege he can possibly claim. Secondly, with respect to executive privilege, the Supreme Court made it extremely clear, couldn't be any clearer. 1974, U.S. v. Nixon. When you have conversations in furtherance of criminal activity, if Donald Trump is talking about things he's going to do that are a crime, there is no executive privilege. Executive privilege only applies for matters that are of state, that relate to national security, national defense. The Supreme Court couldn't have laid it out any clearer in U.S. v. Nixon. There are no privileges. He has to testify.
Nick, you and I have had the opportunity to speak before about the Georgia investigation. It's something that you and I are very interested in, as most people should be. I want to briefly turn to that investigation, and that is of Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the results of the election in Georgia. Things continue to be building there. The documentary filmmaker who filmed Trump and his family in the weeks after the election, Alex Holder, he's been subpoenaed to testify in that special grand jury by the DA, Fani Willis. And it looks like this investigation is looking at other people in Trump's world, including his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Nick, what do those developments signal to you about the status of that particular investigation? I seem to believe that that is going to be maybe the one investigation that does Donald Trump in.
Oh, I totally agree. This is the investigation that everybody should keep their eyes on, because you've got Donald Trump on tape twice with Brad Raffensperger trying to threaten and pressure him into basically finding more votes so he can take the electoral votes in Georgia. You've got him on tape with the chief investigator, and you've got Rudy Giuliani on tape also talking to the Georgia Senate. And on top of all that, you've got the governor of the state, Brian Kemp, who was pressured and threatened by Donald Trump to change the vote and to call the legislature into session. I mean, this is the kind of evidence where you've got tape recordings, you've got lots of witnesses, they all corroborate each other. I think if there is one case that is going to do in Donald Trump, this is it. Because at the end of the day, Merrick Garland has to make a decision here as to whether or not there's going to be a federal case. And he's got a major problem in doing so because of a conflict in the sense that he would be prosecuting not just a former president, but he'd be prosecuting somebody who is likely to be the prime opponent of Joe Biden in the 2024 election. So he either has to defer to Georgia, which he can do under the Justice Department guidelines. He can basically decline prosecution in favor of the Georgia prosecution, which is something I think he could do. Or he could appoint somebody who's really a special prosecutor, not under the ridiculous guideline that they have now in the Department of Justice that lets them put the thumb on the scale of the special prosecutor or special counsel. It'd be a real special counsel like they had in the Watergate with Archibald Cox, who had total independence. So it's got to be one of those two things. And I think it all depends on what the evidence is at the end of the day on the federal case, what the potential defenses are that Trump can raise, and how strong the Georgia case is. And right now, I'd put my money on the Georgia case.
Well, Nick Ackerman, I thank you for your time. We will keep on watching that Georgia case, and we're going to have you back so we can start breaking down exactly what happens if an indictment is returned. Thanks again for your time.
Would love to be here. Thank you.
Thanks.